I was watching A Haunting in Venice, the third of Kenneth Branagh's Hercule Poirot adaptations recently. Around halfway through I had a sudden thought. Remember Dead Again? My mind wandering to a movie I hadn't seen in around 30 years probably means it's safe to say I wasn't completely absorbed in A Haunting in Venice. The only distinguishing feature in all three of the Poirot movies is Branagh's moustache, which even has its own origin story. I kept thinking about Dead Again the next few days, remembering it more for its plot twist than anything else, so I decided to rewatch it. It was Kenneth Branagh's first movie for an American studio, following the success of his adaptation of Henry V.
Once more into the breach, dear friend! Once more!
He was mostly known for Shakespeare, with reviewers comparing him to Alec Guinness and Laurence Olivier. When Henry V scored him Oscar nominations as both actor and director, Hollywood seemed inevitable. The script, which had been passed around several directors before it reached Branagh, was by Scott Frank. Frank became better known later in the 90s for his Elmore Leonard adaptations, and more recently worked on the two good Wolverine movies. The plot is straight out of classic film noir. An LA private eye is hired to help a mute amnesiac woman find her real identity. Events take a turn when she's placed under hypnosis and begins to remember a past life in the 1940s, where a famous composer was sent to death row for the murder of his wife. Branagh plays the detective, with his then wife Emma Thompson as the mystery woman. The supporting cast has Andy Garcia as a charming reporter, Derek Jacobi as an antique dealer with a sideline in hypnotism, and Robin Williams has a brief role as a disgraced psychiatrist reduced to working in a grocery store. In detective fiction there are many famous names: Agatha Christie, Dashiell Hammett, Arthur Conan Doyle, Raymond Chandler and so on. But when we talk about movie thrillers, one name stands above them all: Alfred Hitchcock.
Good evening.
His movie set templates directors are still following to this day. By the time Hitch made The Truly Sadistic Frenzy in 1972, directors in Italy were raising the stakes even further. Giallo directors like Dario Argento were making lurid stories of knife-wielding serial killers with even more elaborate set pieces. In America, Brian De Palma's thrillers took more specific inspiration, with Body Double as a sleazier version of Rear Window, and Dress to Kill heavily indebted to both Vertigo and Psycho. Both were controversial, especially Dress to Kill's transphobia, itself a holdover from Psycho. Thrillers were now bordering on horror movies. Test audiences for Adrian Lyne's Fatal Attraction hated that the movie ended with the quiet tragedy of the Glenn Close character's suicide. A new ending has her shot down like Michael Myers at the end of Halloween instead. Dead Again also evokes Hitchcock's Vertigo, where James Stewart is asked to follow Kim Novak, who claims to be remembering a past life. Spoilers for a movie from 1958? She isn't, and the whole thing is a setup to cover up for a murder. But while the supernatural was never real in any of Hitchcock's movies, or A Haunting in Venice, it is in Dead Again. The past lives did actually happen. I don't consider this a spoiler, as the same actors play characters in both time periods. I won't spoil the two major twists in the third act though, as I really do want you to see this movie. The flashbacks of Roman and Margaret Strauss are in glorious black and white. They were originally shot in colour, but were changed after test screenings in order to make the plot easier to follow. I could honestly just watch an entire feature-length movie of these sequences. They make the movie feel like a Hitchcock film, but a different one from what the Giallo directors and Brian De Palma were taking inspiration from. Rather than the universal years of Psycho, Rope and Vertigo, Branagh's calling back to the earlier movies produced by David O. Selznick, like Spellbound and particularly 1940's Rebecca. Based on a Daphne du Maurier novel, it was Hitchcock's first American-produced movie. It starred Laurence Olivier and was much more of a romantic thriller. Olivier's performance is superb, managing to make his character seem manipulative in the first half, before becoming much more sympathetic later. It won the Oscar for Best Picture, though Hitchcock famously never won for Best Director. Branagh talks about the film's influence on Dead Again in the commentary.
The outside of the house that you see there and that we return to so often is in Pasadena. And aside from its own particular character, we built the gates that you see, and we also put extra Gothic towers on it to help us produce a greater sense of a vivid and atmospheric house, a la horror films, a la Mandalay in Rebecca.
The hardest thing the movie pulls off, besides its bonkers mystery, is the lead's fully realised performances as characters in both time periods. The novelty of the movie jumping between the 40s and the 90s, black and white to colour, and the actors changing characters should be jarring, but it just becomes part of the story. The gradual reveal of the tragic story of Margaret and Roman, and how that affects the tension between Mike and Grace in the present day, is the real focus, not the filmmaking itself. Dead Again is much more interested in its characters, though it's never exactly subtle.
Somebody help me!
The movie was a mild commercial success, though critical reception was mixed.
I thought the entire film was overwrought from start to finish. In fact, as technically well shot as it is, both in color and in black and white, I started getting angry at this film, rejecting its manipulation of me, because I thought both of Branagh's characters were heartless technical exercises.
I'm in complete disagreement.
You know.
This movie goes on my list of the best films of the year. You say it's too ambitious, but what he's doing here is he's letting out all the stops. He's going all the way. He's trying to make a great, overwrought, melodramatic,
Yes, he is.
coincidental thriller in the
Yes.
tradition of Hitchcock and Orson Welles and people like
Yes.
that. It's for fun, Gene. I never even noticed his accent. I'm sure Olivier didn't have a great American accent in some of his movies either. Who cares?
Well,
this movie is just fun to enjoy and to go with.
The thriller genre reached a climax, no pun intended, in 1991 with Paul Verhoeven's Basic Instinct, which cranked up the sex and violence to the absolute limits of the R rating. But everything changed in 1993 with the adaptation of John Grisham's legal thriller, The Firm. The John Grisham movie became a genre of its own, with 7 movies in as many years. Away from the major studios, the neo-noir updated the hard-bitten cynicism of the 1940s for a modern era, making Dead Again's old-fashioned melodrama seem even more out of place. But even though it's been mostly forgotten now, I think Dead Again is worth seeking out. It's a gothic, romance, mystery that deserves another life.